very happy Sunday evening to everybody. I am your co-host for this evening, Alan Moore. This is Capital Sports Sunday Night Show, the Capital Sports 3.0 Sunday Night Show. There's an awful lot to go through tonight. We are going to start off with a roundup of football. The leagues have just finished and basically having a bit of a chat about that because especially the English Premier League, two former champions going down, and of course then one just barely hanging on by the skin of their teeth. Further on, then we're going to have a look at the Dutch League. We're going to have a look, of course, as well around some more leagues as well, including the absolute meltdown yesterday in Germany and a prime case of sports fluffing, which did not lead to a happy ending. So there you go. We'll also have a look ahead to this week's, it's on Wednesday, the UEFA Europa League. Will Sevilla maintain their unbeaten records in European finals, or will Mr. Mourinho maintain his unbeaten record in European finals? We'll discuss that in just a moment. And then we'll have a look at an Irish runner who has gone from Tala to Texas. She's been tearing it up on the track, but there are a lot of questions to ask about the people that she's working with and what's going on behind the scenes, because she's now in her third year in Texas, the University of Texas. She's getting faster, she's getting stronger, but would you want your child to be put through that as well? We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. And then, of course, we're going to have Johann Skocek. He is a man who is very much into, well, I will say specifically German sport and wrongdoing German sport. He's an absolute expert in it. He actually, we worked together on one project having a look at Bernd Pansold. So he's going to unleash the information that you need to know about Red Bull sports. We see it everywhere. Red Bull Leipzig, Red Bull Salzburg, Red Bull this, Red Bull that, and then of course Red Bull Racing and athletics and the whole lot. He will tell you the man behind their success, tell you about the man behind the success and who he is. We've spoken about it before as well. I've met him many years ago, over 20 years ago, but this is a man who really knows so much about him that is going to scare your pants off. But before your pants get scared off, I'll introduce you to my two co-hosts, Cian McGivney and Andrew Flint. Gentlemen, first of all, Andrew, congratulations. You were promoted last week to the graveyard. Of course, back down next year in the second division again, but, you know, the new second division. Well done. Cian, Kerry, questions?
Yeah, there is at the moment, but again, they'll see what they can do next weekend. There's definitely questions because they were blown out of the water last weekend in Killarney of all places, beaten for the first time since 1995. So there is murmurings around the county. Can they get back to where they were last year? But we'll see. I think we'll hold the guns until next weekend, and I'm sure the guns will be out depending on the results next weekend.
Good. Andrew, okay, I'm going to ask you just about with two men. Of course, the game was away in Perm. You went to it. There's two of you there. You won. It was great. Back home, crown champions of the regional second division. What's the buzz like in the town, or is there buzz, or has there been any reaction to
it? There hasn't been a buzz for quite a long time, but today they played celebratory game. They won 7-0 against a team they struggled to beat, and the atmosphere was quite good. You got to remember, at this level, the capacity of 13,000 in the stadium, they've only had one stand open for 10 years because there just simply haven't been enough people. But this team is very young. There's lots of 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds, which is quite rare in the third tier of Russian football to have such a young team. And it's make or break, isn't it? Because at this level, if you get promoted, you've got a chance of keeping the squad together. Otherwise, every 6 months, it's a regular turnover and you lose and you rehash and it's impossible to get momentum. But Chimen were in the Premier League. They broke records for being terrible in the Premier League, but that's besides the point. We were there. The stadium's ready for Premier League and there's a real buzz around the place. So it was just wonderful. It was a celebration of football today. But last weekend in PM, I've got to be honest, that was possibly my favourite match I've ever attended. That was just glorious. Wonderful.
Okay, that is good to know. And we're moving on to slightly higher level of football. Not quality is probably the same as is. Of course, Luton, they are taking their place up with the big boys next year, day one. But it depends on where they're going to be playing, whether it'll be in their own home stadium or in another stadium. So again, that's up for grabs. It's going to take around 20 to 30 million to build up their own stadium to make it worthwhile. We'll actually play a video of that just quite shortly to see what it's like, how dangerous it is as well, because it's not a nice place to go to visit. It never was. I was there 20-something years ago, went there, and it was a nice place to be, but there we go. Of course, Man City, they are champions. Arsenal second, Man United third. Great result for Man United. And Newcastle finishing fourth. I mean, for what they put in, what they want, it's good for them. It's playing the Champions League football for next season. Liverpool fifth, Brighton sixth, Brighton in Europe. That is just brilliant for them. And Aston Villa in Europe as well. And of course, West Ham could be joining them if they go and win the Europa Conference League as well. Then the bottom of the table, of course, it was not good news for Leicester City and Leeds. They both lost out. Leicester doing all they could today, but it wasn't enough. Everton doing what they needed to do and stayed up by the skin of their teeth, but it's going to be a huge question about what happens to them next season. Leeds going down, of course, many would say deservedly so, but again, you've got two former champions there. You know, Leeds a lot longer ago that they were champions, but still two former champions going down with Liverpool B as well. And of course, Liverpool B putting on such a show today in their last game in the Premier League, drawing 4-4 at home with Liverpool, which most likely it's going to be Jurgen Klopp's final game for the Anfield club. United winning 2-1 today against Fulham. And that's that. I'm just going to ask you both, start off with Keane. Keane, are you surprised that the two went down, or were you thinking that maybe Everton might get sucked into drop as well?
Well, no, I think Everton acted a bit sooner than everyone else in bringing Sean Dyche in, and that seemed to have a bounce effect initially. And then they cherry-picked a couple of results before the season ended and picked up that vital victory today to just about stay up. I think they deserve it. I was just reading about Leeds actually once the season was completed, and they actually only won 7 games this year. I don't know how anyone expected any team to stay up when you only managed to win 7 matches throughout the year. You're expecting an awful lot of favours, and I'd say it's unfortunate for Sam Allardyce. He won't be getting that big hefty bonus now that he hasn't kept them up. But I suppose the big thing for Leeds now, particularly, and Leicester as well, is where they go now. Leeds, I think, are in a state of fluctuation, like they have been several times over the last 20 years. I think the club is in the middle of a process to try and be sold, so it'll be interesting to see, will that be continued with, or will the ownership currently stay with the club just for one championship season and see how they can get on there. But from moving on to Leicester, it's a hell of a fall from a team that less than 7 years, or exactly 7 years ago, were crowned Premier League champions. So it's been a hell of a fall for them over the last couple of seasons.
Of course, Andrew, one of the big things, and at the time I wrote about it, right after he was sacked, the Tinkerman Ranieri, when he was fired, one of the things that he brought in was this absolute, we call Mappe know-how, this sports scientist, excellent sports scientist. He came from the Mappe system, the cycling system in Italy. And they didn't like it when they actually was pointed at, hold on, guys, you were writing academic articles about the impact of caffeine on play. Leicester collapsed after that. They had one good season and then collapsed. It looked like they sold off players, of course. Players are broken down. Before that, of course, they were trying to balance their books. They would, get in players, sign young players to long-term contracts, try not to bring in more older players, selling players on for a profit. But that seemed to break down as well in 2020. It just didn't work for them because, of course, it didn't work for anybody. Are Leicester going to come back up? Because their owner says that now that, because, of course, they have a travel company, duty-free company, they were severely hit by the 2020 lockdown across the world and collapse of travel. He says he won't leave. The Thai owner says he's not going to walk away from the club. But this could be Leicester staying down for a few years. It's not going to be, soon back up. Maybe Leeds might be back up sooner.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the classic nightmare scenario. How can they hold on to the players that they desperately need to hang on to? The likes of James Maddison, Yuri Tielemans has been rumoured to be leaving for the last 2 years. I'm sure he won't be staying now. They have the sort of players that really should be good enough to stay up. But then this season has been so tight until the last 3 or 4 games, I'd say. Virtually the bottom half of the Premier League have been technically in a relegation battle. Leicester, like you mentioned, I mean, look, a lot of their style and effectiveness was on just relentless, non-stop harrying, hassling, running, and the style of their players. Jamie Vardy up front with his explosive pace. N'Golo Kante was like 3 players at once, the cliche goes. But without that energy, they still have the quality. Now, this is what I find slightly confusing. They have brought in good players, but they struggled. And like Cian mentioned, they have not reacted quite as quickly as Everton have. Everton have done just enough. And it took Leicester a while to bring in a change of system, shall we say. And the thing is, they have the history behind them with the fairy tale championship win in 2016, but fairy tales don't get you promoted. They don't give you grit, and they're down in what is arguably the toughest league in the world to get out of, the championship. I mean, Luton 5 years ago were at the very bottom of the Football League, and now they've got promoted out of the championship. You just simply cannot legislate for it. So if the tie owners are staying around, then that's good for stability. They have one of the best training centres in the whole country, yet alone the second tier or even the Premier League alone. So they have the facilities, they have the players at the moment. How many of them stay will probably be key. The parachute payments will cover a little bit of what they will lose out on, but I think it's impossible to say. I think they will go up soon if there is stability behind the scenes. If the owners stay true to their word and stay around. If they lose interest in a year or two, then I think it could be very, very serious for them.
Yeah, that is it. It's all about the owners. Of course, hi to, actually, we've got quite a few comments in. Arthur, sorry, he says, that Everton had Guardian Angels this season. Dead on. And a good question. Okay, 2 good questions actually from Arthur. And actually, there's people repeating it as well. Will Harry Kane stay in London or move and take the money? And also, where does Klopp go? Andrew, you've got to give me 2 club names. Where could Harry Kane go?
Manchester and United.
All right. Cian, Klopp.
As you said last week, the German job is probably a couple of years down the line. So I don't know. Will he end up back in the German league? Bayern Munich are looking for people upstairs. He might want to move upstairs for a couple of seasons as of yesterday. So he might go upstairs for a couple of years and come back down again out of the top tier. So you'd never know.
That is a good thing. And that is one thing I wanted before we look at the German league. And very good point as well. Like, I mean, because Bayern won the league yesterday and just fired people left, right, and centre. Like guys who Hassan Salihamidzic, who I was shocked that he was fired. I mean, I've known about. I actually saw his bank. I saw how much he was getting paid, how he's getting paid, where it was going to, in what currencies. Because my ex's dad was his financial manager. But anyway, that's a long time ago. This is just a bit of a flavour of what some fans might experience next season if Luton are playing at home.
Always a pleasure.
I just imagine, like, a bunch of rowdies kicking off. I mean, it's Kenilworth Road it's quite a tight to the ground. It's a nice ground. You guys are both too young to remember. I remember when it was one of the first pitches along with QPR that had a plastic pitch.
I was going to say it was one of the knee shredders, wasn't it? It was one of those horrific ones.
Awful. And I mean, Luton did well at home and did bad at part. And there was all complaints. And I spoke with footballers who played on that pitch, and they said it was just they were burned to pieces. It was like it was based on sand, so they were actually playing on sand. So some of the cuts are horrific. We're moving on to Germany, of course. Borussia Dortmund blew their chance to win the league. It was an absolute. It was shameful what they did. It was absolute panic stations. How can you say it was? If you were looking at a team who were going to blow up, it was them. And you know what? I've been to see Dortmund play before. I admire them as a club. Many people involved are actually very, very nice people, but I wasn't upset to see them lose yesterday. Now, on the other end of the table, before we look at Borussia, two former champions also dropping down. VfB Stuttgart and Schalke. Hertha, of course, they were already relegated. Stuttgart, of course, were a top team in Europe. Schalke we saw them playing the Champions League. This Lokomotiv Moscow, very, very good side, but absolutely collapse. Andrew, why have Schalke been in such collapse? Because it seems to be on and off the pitch where they've just fallen apart, isn't it?
They just, I'm astonished as to quite how sharply they've fallen. They're one of the biggest clubs in Germany. They have, I think they're one of the third biggest following in the country. They have the history behind them. They have the rivalry behind them. And like you mentioned, very, very recently, they've been in the Champions League. It's quite hard to explain because German clubs, I mean, now you have experience of this, of course, but German clubs are generally known to have a relatively stable organisation behind them. The fan ownership is a popular tag, or the 50+1 rule. But I think with Schalke, just horrific mismanagement. I just can't put a finger on how they have plummeted so far. It's hard to explain. It genuinely is. But I mean, a club of that size, it just is impossible to believe that. You mentioned Leicester going down. It really could be for a while. Schalke, I can't believe, will stay down in the Zweite Bundesliga for very long. I'm certain they'll come back up fairly soon. Just simply for a club of that size, it's just impossible to countenance them staying down. But strange things have happened.
Yeah, I mean, they've been down the season before. They came back up last season, when they won the second division, or Zweite Liga, as you said, the second Bundesliga. No, it has been a long time since they were champions of Germany. It was 1958. I'll put my money on it. 1958 that they won it. It's a long time since they won anything really. They won the German Cup back in 2010. But they have won the UEFA Cup back in '97. They were a very strong side then. They are a good team. They have a lot of decent players as well. I mean, you look at some of the players that they have on their side. They're not bad. They are not bad players. Alex Krai, of course, we know from Spartak Moscow. He was sent on loan there. They have players coming in from other big clubs, but there's something lacking with them. So again, there is financial issues there as well. They have a nice stadium, very big following. VfB Stuttgart, another team as well, who are surprisingly odd. I mean, realistically, if we look at VfB Stuttgart, again, a team with great passion, great fans, huge money. I'll say one thing, that side by side you have the and I just blanked the name of where VfB play, Stuttgart play, but beside you have the Porsche Arena, because Porsche is from the neck of the woods, and there they have a massive tennis events and all different sports events, and so there's huge money in Stuttgart. It's a very rich city, but the club are in all sorts of trouble. One fun thing I want to play. This is what amused me, I should say, last night, this morning when I was traveling back over from Ekaterinburg. This is an interview with a losing manager from yesterday. You'll just switch your brains off for a moment and just say, wait, hold on. This is a journalist. So this is a journalist, not the club person. This is a journalist interviewing the manager after the manager had been in tears a few minutes before. So here we go.
Just finally, I had a text from a Dortmund fan today who just wanted to thank you for what you've given him and his fellow fans here today. And we saw that with the way that they received you. Will you take any consolation out of what you, plural, as a trainer team, have done here in building that connection back to the fans? Because it felt like something still this season.
Yeah, we said it from day one that if we want to compete and if we want to be successful, it's not enough to have 11 players or 26 players in the squad. It's not enough to have 700 or 1,000 employees. We need everybody. We need everybody to stay positive. We need everybody to believe. We need everybody to lift themselves up, even if it's tough. As I mentioned, it feels very unfair today because we've been through so many setbacks this season. But again, this is a test. And again, they're going to test us, and they're going to try to see how much we can take. And so we have to lift ourselves up. We have to get the energy back, and then we're going to try a new attempt from the beginning of July. and then we have to improve. But we've been on a really great way the recent months with a good year 2023. We are on a good way, but unfortunately today without a happy end. So we have to fight for the next season, and hopefully next season we're going to have a happy end.
Every time I've had you here, mate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. We will see you next season. Edin Terzic, all the best. Thank you. Back to UK.
Now, on the list of things that didn't happen, I got a message from a Borussia Dortmund fan to thank you and the whole lot. I was genuinely, I was like, when I saw that, I was like, oh no, come on, that's just really terrible. Because the whole day had been this like Borussia Dortmund fest. On Twitter, if you followed, it was awful. They were in church singing "You'll Never Walk Alone." It was just, I don't know. Am I wrong in saying that they're like, okay, they're the hipster club of choice because of their look at me, I'm waving a big banner. Are the fans just pathetic, or is that just me being an old timer? I don't know.
No, I'm still trying to figure out what the hell did he actually ask him. I couldn't make head nor tail of the question.
Yeah.
I didn't know what he asked him, so I don't know how he could answer it.
I think the real problem is Dortmund. Hipster club is definitely the right tag. I think they're a victim of their own success in recruiting young, promoting youth into the first team brilliantly. I mean, look at how well they have not just promoted youth, but promoted foreign youth. They brought over so many English youngsters. What they did with Jadon Sancho, Jude Bellingham, is still only 19, and yet he's effectively the most in-demand midfielder in the world. Dortmund, yellow wall. The yellow wall is the most incredible stand in world football. Now, when somebody says something is so wonderful all the time, there is a part, I think, of most people that says, well, hang on a minute, let me decide. I'll decide if I think it is wonderful, in my opinion. And it's not Dortmund's fault. They're an incredibly entertaining side to watch. They genuinely are. But, I mean, Archie is actually, he's done a brilliant job to get from absolutely zero onto ESPN. And he goes for this really friendly style of presenting. And I actually do think he does a very good job, generally. I think saying a friend sent a text was just, you didn't need to say that. Just simply say, look, the fans are still here. They're still making great noise. There's no need to go quite that far into the, well, my mate says, your mate says this, that, I don't know. Dortmund, I was assured, and Alan, this won't surprise you, but I was assured before this weekend. I spoke to my Bundesliga friends. I go to them for my contacts. They've worked for years in Bundesliga football, and they said with absolute certainty, don't worry, Bayern are going to win this. Bayern will win. Dortmund will do a Dortmund. Bayern will do a Bayern. The outsiders will say, oh, well, it's just the 11th title in a row. Bayern practically tried everything they could to lose the title. Dortmund, well, I don't think anybody's actually all that surprised, despite how dramatic it looks on paper. And I
mean, you're right. Like you kind of did the whole goal difference loss and the whole lot at the end of the season. I mean, I wasn't surprised. I met Edin here when he was working here in Moscow with the team. He's a bag carrier in the worst possible sense. I don't think he's a first team coach. I think he does well, but he has good people there with him as well as people who know how to get things done. One person I would say to have a look up, because this is interesting. If you look up in his background and even dig into it, it's quite murky, but if you dig into it as well, the head of the athletic department, they're like their main fitness people, the fitness coaches, Shad Forsyth. He wandered into Germany because of a certain gentleman who was Der Stuck, as they nicknamed him in England. He was with the German national team. He then was with Arsenal, for I think he joined maybe 2013, 2014, something like that, as far as I remember. He's a youngish guy. Well, he's my age, but he was young then, older now, obviously. And then he was brought in by Edin Terzic to the Borussia team. A lot of questions around him. He has a real of a sniff of Pep Blinders, and of course Edin as well. So that's kind of a little backside to that. So it's a fun one. So moving very quickly on, of course, I said that in the Dutch Premier League, Dutch top flight, I should say, the Eredivisie ended off today. Feyenoord, of course, they were already crowned champions. PSV, PSV, Ajax and Alkmaar finished in that order. So Ajax missing out of Champions League football is a killer for them because apparently they have some, long-term they're okay, but they have some short-term financial issues. It's related to COVID payments or some fines they received for COVID. So it's going to be a struggle for them on a lower amount of money. We discussed before, of course, Liverpool, how they're going to try and face this, and some great difficulties. One thing I wanted to run by you guys because Johann Skocek, we're going to get onto him very, very quickly. On Wednesday, the Europa League final, Sevilla and Roma, a huge showdown. A disappointing enough season for Sevilla, finishing 10th in La Liga. AS Roma still have that chance to qualify for Europe as well, automatically, not just in winning this. Very quickly, during the week, I put a post into our Telegram channel in relation to Mourinho and all the coaches who've gone to Spurs and failed. Now Spurs are looking for the Celtic manager. Who's going to prevail, Keane, on Wednesday night? Of course, kickoff is at 9 p.m. CET. Who are you picking for the Europa League champions?
Roma. Just basically because it's Mourinho and what he has done at European level. He really does know how to win a European competition. He's won the Champions League several times. Won a European trophy with Manchester United as well, which Andrew was pretty pleased about, I'm sure. So he's definitely the man I'd be picking on Wednesday night, and I think he has that particular squad working extremely hard, and it will be an interesting final. I think it'll be a very, very tactical final. I think it could be a very boring final. I think there might only be a goal either side of it, so it'll be a very, very tactical final, but I think Roma will come through.
Andrew, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this has got a 0-0 written all over it, going to extra time and penalties, really. I mean, Sevilla were struggling against relegation at one point this season, but they managed to gain a bit of momentum just at the wrong time when they faced Manchester United. We're possibly before the watershed in some countries. But like Ian says, Mourinho is so obsessed with his personal record. There is no stone he will leave unturned to make sure that he grinds out a frustrating situation for Sevilla. But Sevilla, look, the cliche is they are the Europa League champions. I think I'm right in saying they've never lost in the Europa League final. I've certainly won it more than any other club in recent years. So I'm sitting on the fence, but I do think it will go to penalties. I genuinely do. I think both sides will be over the moon to get a trophy of this size. I'm going to say Sevilla because, well, it's Jose on the other side, isn't it?
Okay, that is fair enough. All right, we are going to move very, very quickly into the next little part. This is related to a runner. Okay, or actually, no, it's not. That's not. I'm telling you a lie. We're going to speak about with Johan. This is what happened yesterday in the English Premiership final, of course, in rugby between Sale and Saracens. You just watch what happens next, but most importantly, listen to the reaction of the crowd and just watch how easy it is to get onto the pitch with a substance. This could be anything. This could be a knife. This could be a gun. Okay, maybe not a gun, but they got this substance into the ground, onto the field, and over players, officials, and other fans and security as well. Watch it and think.
That's not easy.
okay, reaction to some of the fans, guy going in to throw a drink over the guy, that's an arsehole. That's an arsehole who would do it to anyone else. So there's no call for that. Violence begets violence. But what someone come along and attacking then this guy coming off the field, it just shows the level of stupidity that was there. I understand the men calling apologies for the language that was being used. No, I don't apologize because people are feeling that. Again, throwing something at the guy who's been led off, yeah, you're a big hard man. But going onto the field to disturb that, that's, for me, that's terrifying. And that goes back to what we spoke about, why it was a good idea. From February last year, why it was a good idea that Russian clubs and teams, from blind football to girls under 16 football, were banned from UEFA competitions because these head cases, the crazies, this would happen. I'm going to start with you just very, very quickly to sum it up. How dangerous is this? And we've spoken this before, the guys who were like tying themselves to nets and, doing the thing around his neck beside the goalpost.
Yeah.
Is this the new norm?
Well, it is the new norm, which is the most concerning part of it. They're clearly absolutely hell-bent on doing this as much as they possibly can. The point they're trying to make is one that is a sensible one about the environment and how much oil exploitation, fossil fuels are being abused, but they're going about it they're going absolutely out of control. They're going manically out of control, so much so that they're actually damaging their message. And I know they will say, it doesn't matter, just we want to get our message out as much as we possibly can, and it doesn't matter how we do it, as long as we get the message out, that's good. Well, actually, no, it isn't, because people are just furious and fed up with the disruption they're causing. Now, they will say, well, look, that's the whole point of what a protest is. Well, not when it comes to safety. The powder that they use, well, you would assume it is just simply as colouring and staining a powder as possible. It actually does damage plant life. They attacked the Chelsea flower show a couple of days earlier, and it actually killed off the plants. Now, if something can kill off a living organism, that could damage players' health. Now, that's just the powder they actually used. Like you mentioned, they could have had, well, what could they have had? They could have had anything, even if they had nothing, just physically on the pitch. One thing I noticed about that clip, they strolled onto the pitch completely unchallenged. I have to be honest, the security around the pitch at Twickenham, when you've got 80,000 people in the stadium, that is seriously concerning. Because look, whichever way you look at it, you can say, please be normal and don't do this. People will do it if they want to. You just simply have to be prepared for idiots to keep doing things like this. You have to have better security in the short term.
Yeah.
But it's terrifying.
Yeah, Keane, I mean, if this happened in Ireland, I mean, there'd be outrage as well. It hasn't happened so far, though, has it?
It hasn't, but I'm sure it will. It will happen. I mean, it's happened at the Grand National. It's happened at Twickenham yesterday. It's happened at several areas or several places of prominence in England. It's happened a couple of times in smaller locations in Ireland, but it's been dealt with. But a bit like Andrew there, the one thing that surprised me was the people that seemed to deal with the two protesters. They didn't have any high visibility jackets. To me, they didn't look like security people. They looked like people that would be going up and down the stands with drinks and things like that. People to show you to your seat or something. So that's a worrying thing, that none of the people in the yellow jackets kind of went, these two people shouldn't be on the pitch in any shape or form. Get them off the pitch. The stewards in the stand should have been able to deal with that, because Twickenham is huge and there should be enough stewards to be able to deal with stuff like that quite quickly, and it shouldn't have taken that long to get them, and it really shouldn't have been the two people that I would consider not stewards to have to take them off the field with the help of Tom Curry as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, it puts people at danger.
Yes, it does. Yeah,
anyone who's played sport at any point, and I do remember once, a simple little thing, playing a game in Croatia, it was 4th division, and someone ran onto the pitch from I was standing in defence. Someone ran on from across my left shoulder and just punched one of the opposition. Now, it was one of their own people. Something happened. Something was said at a corner, or there was some row. And it was at the start of the second half. Someone just ran on and punched them, and a big fight broke out. But it was this local nonsense that was going on. But to be honest with you, I've had it before, as I said in boxing, when somebody starts, like jumps in the ring as you're walking out of the ring, and someone jumps at you, the whole lot, like, you're completely defenseless and you really don't know what to do. And it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying. I've spoken with today a lovely Moscow women's team player, and she said that when they were, I think it was, actually might have been in Perm actually, because I met Perm coaches and team yesterday flying from Ekaterinburg, when they were playing down, I think it was down there, and someone then, as she went over to take a throw in, people they threw apples or apple butts at her, and she said that it really, she said she woke up that night like thinking, Jesus, like, it, because it just was a shock, she was hit in the face, the back, but anyway. Right, we're going to go out to the break right now and bring in our special guest for this evening. So just bear with us. We're going to go right out right away and come back with a very, very small video that's going to lead us into the next topic we're going to cover. So back in just one moment. And here we go with that video, and we're going to speak about it in just one moment with Johann Skocek.
Rosie Effiong out well in lane number 6 from Arkansas. And that's Ada Kelly in lane number 5. Ada Kelly, the Longhorn and the Razorback. Ada Kelly and Effiong. Rosie Effiong, Razadat Ada Kelly, and a fight for third. I believe that's Bailey Lear in third. Ada Kelly, Effiong, and Bailey Lear in a fight, and inside is Paris Peoples and Lear battling for that final spot, automatic spot, and it's going to be Texas's Razadat Ada Kelly. Woo! Woo-hoo-hoo! Effiong, Razadat Ada Kelly, 49-54. Rosie Effiong,
That is Ireland's very own, all the way from Tala, Razadat Adeleke. Johann, you're very, very welcome to the show this evening. We've spoken before, but now you're joining us here for the first time. Johann, I just want to get your opinion as an expert in America, in American universities. How do you rate the quality of anti-doping?
Thanks for having me. I already learned so much from listening to you. So, anti-doping in the USA and the American. You asked me about anti-doping.
Yeah.
Colleges. I've been a sports journalist in Austria for 40 years. And I'm not sure anti-doping measures in the US colleges and sports clubs exists, because we all know cases, very famous cases from world champions, Olympic champions having tested positive before the Olympics. It was shown under the desk, and you know all the names. And they went to the Olympics and scored gold.
This is it. I mean, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Johann.
No.
No, I look with this girl, Razadat Adeleke. She's an Irish-born girl. She is one of the, we'll say in a nice way, new Irish. So the same in many countries, people who've moved in, a lot of Irish Americans, for example, or Swedish Irish who are who were parents were moved across and they were born there and so on. Myself and Andrew, our kids would be, English Russians or Irish Russians or whatever. So I mean, it's great to see that development. But in Ireland, there's a very much an unquestioning nature about her success, and especially going to the University of Texas, which has a long-term history of, as you mentioned, like with issues. Do you think, and I'm going to step into our next part of the conversation. Do you think that our own athletes don't dope?
I think they are doping all over the world.
Okay.
I know a story about. I'm not sure if we talked about it. You know, you have to excuse me. I'm wearing this earphones because otherwise I would have difficulties following your very fluent and for me a little foreign English. You know, so I have to strain myself. But you know this story about the trainer of who was the guy who won the Seoul 100 meters?
Oh, Ben Johnson, Charlie
Ben
Francis.
Johnson. Yeah, the chief trainer of Ben Johnson, and he was in Europe, and he was on a studio on a with trainers, and he told a story that the most he learned was from the East German trainers. You know, the most he learned about training and doping was from the East European trainers. And I know that Pansold was pissed. And Pansold, he attended many things like that, lecturing the Austrian trainers of very many disciplines. In the 80s, you know, it was long before East Germany broke up, and he got federal money for doing this, you know. So this was at the time when I think everybody must have known that this was a guy who did certain things, and still he was invented to Austria to lecture the sports medicines of Austria, you know, and nobody could tell me up to this day that they didn't know.
This is the
Because
thing. Yeah.
they're connected all over the world. They're exchanging their things and so. But the sports medicine in Austria was so down in the 80s and 90s. They were thankful. They were falling on their knees to have guys like Pansold come and lecture them. So
That leads us ideally into the next this part. And again, for you and I, it's a personal thing, Johann. And one thing we say, well, just with Bernd Pansold, Andrew knows well because we discussed it before on the radio and in person. Keane has read up a lot of it as well and seen like the Irish reports on it. In the 60s, from 1968 through to I think it was 1990, he was one of the heads of sports science. But he was like advising on the East German national team, the ODDR. He was also the head doctor for sports club Dynamo Berlin, which of course
Dynamo Berlin, was the swimming club.
The swimming club. Now I remember, and Johan, you remember. So the boys might be maybe a bit young for this. You remember the absolute. The superb performances from East German in the especially in the just when things were starting to break down, for example, like so you had these terrific athletes like Katrin Krabbe, Grit Breuer as on athletes.
Christiane Sommerknacke.
Yes.
The first to swim the 100-meter butterfly under 1 minute.
Exactly. And then, so you got like runners, you got swimmers, but I think Heike Drexler as well, who they had, I remember, and I cannot for the life of me find it, but it was a BBC documentary where they found that they had gotten the list of how they were doping her, but her performances were going down because her body was reacting the wrong way. When they stopped doping her, she began to perform. So it was this, it had the opposite effect on her. They gave her something different. And I also remember she was a young girl, maybe 16, 17, like a gorgeous girl, terrific swimmer, Franziska van Alpsig.
Yeah.
Now, if anyone looks up, she just blew people away and suddenly ran into the Chinese. The Chinese had gotten their East German doctors over. The Russians had got theirs. The UK had theirs. They had for the UK rowing, which is always very good because, of course, it's a culture in like, for example, many universities. They had
that's
Jürgen
a good point. British rowing, that's a good point.
Jürgen Grobler, they brought in.
Yeah.
I know in Ireland when I was only starting university in 91, there were a couple of guys who came in from East Germany to advise the university rugby team, but they were kind of pushed aside because Ireland at that time they were still trying to be amateur, not knowing to be professional. But Bernd Pansold, again, this man, he's an age now. He's 81, I think it is. Was that correct?
Yeah.
81. Last year, you were telling me, or you told me this year, but last year, he renewed his medical license to continue practicing. And of course, he has been a doctor to the stars. Here we see him, of course, with Red Bull. The blonde in the picture hugging on to Tiger Woods is Lindsey Vonn, of course, superstar American skier. She went to consult him. And of course, in 1998, he was fined they found out that he was doping little children to make them, better, I guess. And of course, that all sort of disappeared. He doesn't do that anymore. Johann, I want to hand this over to you now because I've met the man very briefly. Dealt with the man very briefly. Only found out after the fact who he was because I didn't know he just was a nice kind of uncle, but he was just called Uncle. Johann, give us a background on him. Tell us about him. Of course, he's linked to a death as well, a very, very tragic death. So tell us a story.
A background about Pansold's life.
Exactly, and sort of the outside of sports, and then we'll go into the sports side as well. So it's over to you.
So Bernd Pansold is a medicine. He studied medicine and he studied biology, and so he got a very, very fine knowledge about the chemistry of the human body. That was one of the things that made him special. And he registered into the East German sports system, and he became the leading doctor of, as you mentioned, Dynamo Berlin, which was the biggest swimming club in East Germany, and the Stasi, the federal Geheimpolizei, like the NSA of USA, and he had, of course, many doctors helping him, but he was the one who invented this 3-step test method, to get from aerob muscle activity to anaerob muscle activity, meaning muscle activity aerob is where you so much oxygen like your body can process. Anaerob is you're processing more oxygen that your body can get into. So they're staying in your body certain things behind which make your muscles ache the next day. I don't know what you call it in English. And he invented this, blood taking to test stage a sportsman or sportswoman was after the training. So he could optimize the training, fast you run, how much you lift, how hard you train, the intensity, the length of your training. And he became pretty famous for this. And he was one of the best in this regard worldwide. And maybe he still is. That's why he was so sought after for lecturing in all of the world. But the second side of his is he became an agent, a secret agent, and he was spying on his colleagues, and he was spying on the sports guys and sports girls to help the secret police to determine who could get out of the DDR, the East Germany, to make international competitions, and who won't because they were not So he was helping these sportsmen, sportswomen, to get better, but he oversaw at the same time who was by the police allowed to go abroad and who was not. And this, I must say, learned very well. He's a very charming, nice opapa, grandpa. He's charming. You talk to, but he's an ice cold guy at his heart. You know, who can't be moved. I spoke on the telephone with him at the end of our research for this podcast. We went there. We knocked on his house. He came out of the house. He talked to colleagues of Germany and me of Bayern, two very nice, very competent journalists from Bajuvaria and me. And he talked like we were arranging a meeting for a coffee, you know, in a coffee shop. No, there are, yeah, I like to talk to you. I don't want to answer questions. There's no need. I'm out of a job. I don't want to work anymore. Yes, I still read something, books, you know, because the gray cells need to work. But, you know, then he talked about the death of his girlfriend, which we maybe talk about a little more later. And he said, and this is really what shocked me. I just realized it afterwards when we were sitting in the car and talking about with Pansold. My God, talking about silver, we could talk about the weather too, you know. So this was a guy who supposedly killed his own girlfriend by accident, I must say, but another guy got convicted about this. So, and this coldness, this determination to have success, his knowledge, his international fame is what I think it couldn't have been any other way that attracted Didi Mateschitz, the owner of Red Bull, and he contacted him and he made him the chief medical officer for the whole Red Bull sports program. And Bastian Vettel to Lindsey Vonn to all kinds of guys and girls from all over the world, they came to Red Bull to be tested and treated and getting training schedules from Pansold.
So again, so people will wonder, okay, so, and I will
was
say,
that understandable?
Yeah, Johann, so clear. And again, we'll speak with the death of his partner in a moment, because again, that's something that needs to be dug into as well. So we're looking at this, and I will say Sebastian Kraus is one of the people who Johann works with from Bavaria Radio and TV. Terrific person. Johann, who else was there as well with you?
Sebastian was there, yeah, and Kilian Medele. So
okay,
we all were there at Pansold's house, yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, two people. I have a couple of questions for you on that. I know the boys want to ask questions as well before we move on to the next step about the tragic death of his ex. First question, Johann, did he mention anything about his time in Obertauern in the Austrian High Performance Center, the Olympic Center? Did he say anything about that? And yeah, just that question first.
No, we asked him, but he didn't answer this question. He didn't want to talk Obertauern. And that was, of course, I didn't mention it because I didn't want to talk too long. This was, of course, the Hermann Maier, the most famous ski racer in the last 50 years, except of Franz Klammer, was formed there. No, and Pansold didn't talk about this. No, we talked to Heini Bergmüller, whom you know.
Yes.
I think you know.
Yeah.
We talked to. We went to Bergmüller's home. We talked at length with Heine Bergmüller, and he told us many things about Pansold, how he worked there, how he got along with Heine Bergmüller, who he kind of educated and trained, whom he made training schedules for. He Walter Meyer, the Austrian famous coach, Langläufer, the ski races. He learned very much from Pansold.
Yeah, I mean, Hermann Meyer, of course, was the great Herminator. So someone who that he was brilliant. Like if he crashed, he would go on again. And as you mentioned, so there is that side as well where he worked with these elite athletes and made them better. And one thing as well that people do not, and it really bugs me when I see it, and people kind of like, wow, how great they've come on. Haaland is a product of Red Bull, and people say, oh no, football's a skill game. No, it's
bullshit. It doesn't work without doping.
Yeah, exactly.
At that level, no way.
And I mean, and the most important thing is recovery, because when they work so hard, and Haaland does work a lot. He's a big, strong man, and to move ahead like his, it's so good. And one of the things as well that speaking with people who are involved with Lokomotiv Moscow, from this whole, well, another gentleman who went then, Ralph Rangnick, who went to Manchester United. I think he's back in Austria now. He's down in Austria again.
Very good point.
Yeah. So, I mean, this whole nexus comes together. And this is what you said at the start, Johann. And this is what, when I was, bumped into it here in Russia, where there's still doping. There always was doping, always is doping, always will be doping. It doesn't go away. People might leave. Rodchenkov ran away, but a new Rodchenkov takes his place. They're very good at what they do, and people go to them. Indian athletes who are coming to Russia to get special training. UK GB athletes were linked with Rodchenkov to get special training as well. So but do you think how bad, should there be an investigation into the Red Bull, just even the football system, Johann?
Absolutely. But I don't think you will find something. We spoke to trainers under the
anonymity.
Under anonymity, yeah. We spoke to athletes. I've studied sports in the 70s in Austria, and many old trainers, very well connected in Austria and abroad. I know many of them at the first, not so many, but on the second and third level, from studying with them, getting ski courses with them, and they all said, we don't know how they do it, but no one could testify Pansold or any other guy used doping methods in Red Bull. There, of course, is this suspicion. There are interviews of, in I think, a Danish paper of a guy who said it's very interesting. The athletes always went to a special case of Red Bull drinks, and they all this kind of Red Bull and not the Red Bull drinks that normal people drank. But I think an analysis would be worthwhile. I don't think you'll find anything, but it's only this is my suspicion.
No, that's a scary thing. And again, when they, even when they knew what to look for different places, it's covered up so well. And it depends on what wants to be released as well. I mean, I know Paul Kimmich, our journalist, said, he was on the show with us, and he said, if the Irish Rugby Football Union were serious about saying, oh no, we're clean with no doping, he said, okay, let me look through your records and see what you've given to players. And he added, at the same time, I know there'll be nothing there, because it's not going to be there. It's not going to be written. the thing that the Stasi got caught with was that they were noting, they were very scientific, and that's what brought them down. Andrew, you've a question to throw in, then Cian, you just straight in then afterwards.
Yeah, Johann, when you mention with such certainty we won't find anything, is this just simply your opinion of how strong the international network of sports science is at protecting itself, not just within one organization, but you mentioned the networking that went on decades ago. Is that networking still so strong that even people with connections outside Bernd Pansold's organization will still protect him because they're worried about the context being lost?
That's one important thing. And the other thing is, I've talked to anti-doping chemists, leading anti-doping from anti-doping laboratories in Austria and in Germany, and so, and they said we're getting very quick and very, very, very good at analyzing these things, but they're still, we don't know, 2 or 3 steps ahead, because Red Bull has so much more money than the state of Austria. The whole state of Austria is pouring into the anti-doping system, and it all follows the money,
Yeah.
And everybody, as you've mentioned, and everybody, I know this is the heart of the matter. Anybody in this sport is interested to keep up the fairy tale of clean sport. This is the one unique selling proposition. Once they give up this, they can pack up and go home.
Cian?
Yeah, does the doping, you've spoken about the athletics and the football arm of Red Bull. Does it extend, the doping side of it, does it extend into the Formula 1 arm of Red Bull as strongly as it goes into the athletic side and the football side of the organization?
I didn't quite get it, John. I'm sorry. Could you repeat it?
No problem. Does the doping situation, does it affect the Formula 1 arm of Red Bull as much as it affects the football side and the athletic side of the organization?
Formula 1, yeah, good point. We spoke to called Pfeifenberger, who is in the podcast. And I can't remember if this, what I tell you now, but he said Formula 1, training of Formula 1 is not rocket science. You have to make them strong. You have to make them with G-forces, but it's not as complicated as, say, training an 800 or 400 meter runner. This is far more complicated. So in my opinion, I don't think this eventual doping plays such a primal role in Formula 1 than in, say, I'm not sure they don't do it. Maybe football, I don't think so. But
okay, Andrew, so you want to jump back in?
Well, there was just actually one slightly more general point I wanted to ask you about, Johann. You mentioned about Bernd Pansold's coldness. I mean, we are, of course, talking about the sports science side of him, but do you believe that it's possible to be a great winner within sport without that single-minded coldness? Because we hear that in a positive sense about great captains, great winners who put sport above all else. Are those two different characteristics, a coldness of emotion and a coldness of analyzing your own performance?
No, I think these are two different things. I hope I get it across in English. What I talk about in Pansold, what I felt, and my two German colleagues as well, is being unmoved for instance, at least in the talking to us, by the death of his girlfriend, by saying the other thing is keeping a clear head, keeping a clear head in analyzing a situation like Erling Haaland, which he has to decide in a split second what centimeter-wise move he has to make in the box in football. That's a completely different thing. I mean, to prescribe doping for girls who have the first blood after they have the first blood, and at the same time spying on them if they are conform with the regime, if they are Germans are criticizing the regime and therefore forbidding them to go abroad to competition. That's a completely different thing than the cold-bloodedness of a supreme athlete.
I will admit, and again, my experience was where we'd all given blood analysis. Actually, and I always forget if we did urine, but I know it was blood analysis where we were given in a training camp, and we were then to get vitamin injections. That was just like beyond the pale for me. And Pansold was there saying, "Yeah, you can take the injections. It's okay. Just nothing to worry about." Even when I asked, "What's in it? What's in it?" And I will say this, and this is what comes back to what Johann said about this kind of conformity and this kind of fear. For example, the whole situation was that every boxer that was there as a team, and it wasn't just us, like it was other people as well, pulled down the shorts, bent over, and got the injection. No one said no. Guys who I know who wouldn't take a drink, who didn't drink, didn't smoke, were very clean living, good guys, but they got the injection because they were run down, because they lacked this or this or this, and there was an injection. Now listen, it might have just been that, but then give me a cup of tea with her. Like, I mean, I was still am more natural. It didn't get to me. Pansold was like, "You're okay," but he also said, "If you don't want to do it, it's okay." Very kind, very polite, very, very nice, smiling. And as Johan said, it's like, and I left the camp because I knew I was gone. And when I spoke with the late Jörg Berger, who knew about him, Jörg Berger, who's an ex-East German soccer player, became a coach in Germany. I met him working with Eintracht Frankfurt. When I told him about who it was, he told me, "Oh, that's you should have run away from him. He's dangerous." They knew this, but again, I would know that many coaches would never say a word about doping. Speak with me privately, because he does bad things. We don't have much time left, but I just want to ask you: can you just tell a little bit about the incident, the tragedy where Pansold's former partner was killed? The whole situation around it, because that again was kind of key to the whole investigation as well. It was like this coldness that he had, that he really didn't care about someone else taking the fall for him, even though it was an accident.
It's the last day of May 2017. An elderly woman, Maria Wintersteller, gets a call from Pansold, and he says to her, "Who wants to talk to you?" His girlfriend, Sylvia Wintersteller. Sylvia Wintersteller tells her mother, "Please, Mom, this guy is destroying me. I want to leave." The mama calls a taxi driver whom she knows very good. He picks her up, brings her there. When they arrive, Pansold stands on the street in a undershirt and undertrousers. They asked him, "Where is Sylvia?" And he points to a grass, a lane. She went there in the grass. It's night. Yeah, it's night. Everything's dark. She vanished in the grass. So the taxi driver he says, Pansold in. They went make a short round looking for Sylvia. They don't find her. The taxi driver leaves because he has a Pansold gets his car, a white SUV, a white Audi. goes into the grass and looks for Sylvia. He instantly finds her lying on the ground. He calls Maria, Sylvia's mother. Here she is. Here she is. Maria runs to her daughter, which is obviously lifeless. She wants to revive her. Pansold stands there and does nothing. He doesn't call the ambulance. He doesn't help. I mean, he's a medicine man. He's a doctor. He doesn't help Maria treat her daughter. So Maria calls the ambulance. The doctor arrives. He says, I'm sorry, Sylvia is dead. The police comes, they start investigate, and the witness testifies that he was in the vicinity talking to and he saw a man trying to get a woman who was obviously not at the full height of her powers, trying to drag her into his white SUV. He doesn't succeed. The girl runs off. Guy, which maybe points to the complicity of Pansold in the taxi driver, and Mama arrives. He was never asked in court to testify. He was just police at the site in the night, and never was called up by court to testify. The Pansold was never a suspect. He was just didn't help Sylvia lying on the ground. He was asked by one policeman in his house. It was investigated why he didn't help, but this was closed very, very soon. And the taxi driver was, because of a study of a car expert, of a traffic expert. He was the only suspect because the traffic expert said the traces of the car, of the tires, they match the tires of the taxi. It is a traffic expert, no criminal expert. The court has a second study from the Federal Bureau of Criminal Investigations of Austria, which says there is no conclusive evidence that the traces on the body and the shirt of the dead girl was from the taxi. It could very well have been the traces of the Q52 of Pansold. This wasn't taken even into consideration by the court. It was just asked. This traffic expert just the traces of the taxi. The taxi driver was how do you call it? Verurteilt. He was convicted. 10 months probation. He went into second round, and he was found guilty too. But the Strafe, he had to pay 270 euro. This was the verdict for one dead girl, 270 euro. It was like the court said, we know you're not guilty, but sorry, we can't help you. In the next round, every time the trying to get another round in court was thrown away, even by the European Court of Human Rights. It was thrown back, and plus there was a second study of the Criminal Court of Bureau of Criminal Investigation in Austria, who said explicitly that the traces on the dead body would only have Pansold's car. If there wasn't a third car, we don't know about. No matter the verdict sticks, Pansold gets free.
What exactly did she die of? What was the cause of death eventually?
Because the car with one tire went on her chest. And the heart exploded. She died from inner bleeding. The car went on her chest and back, but because of the weight of the car on her chest, the heart.
Yeah. So was it an accident, or was it kind of what they call vehicular homicide, like killing someone with a car?
I don't know. I
Okay.
don't think so. But it's just my opinion. I
Yeah.
can't testify this. I think it was an accident. I
Okay.
think it was an accident, and if Pansold did it, or it happened to him, he didn't have the stamina to say, "I'm sorry." But
Or maybe
it's more. It's obviously it's more than.
yeah.
I
No,
mean,
I think we understand it. It's because when I read into it and I looked at it, there was so many, because you put me onto it, and when I looked, I was like, wait, he has to at least say it was stuff happens. Stuff happens. Like, tragedies happen. A relative of ours, he was reversing in his driveway and killed his child by accident because he didn't like it. The little child cycled out on a bike behind the truck. It was a horrific tragedy, but again, Johan, just last question before we go away for the evening. There's always questions that I ask people, and people ask me, and it's the exact same questions like, will we ever see what we would consider as clean sport, or do we just have to just shut up and accept it and just enjoy the show?
I think I understand that you ask it, but I think that's a question for school children. I mean, if you have, it's a very interesting question, and it's what us makes us tick. I'm a sport journalist. You're all a sport journalist. Of course, we talk about this all the time, and this is the most important question. But it's unanswerable because I studied sports. I worked as a sports journalist since 1980.
Yeah.
It's well, you know what they call it in Greek? It's a oxymoron.
Oh yeah.
It's a black black sheep, or how would you call white horses?
White elephant? No.
A black white horse, or
Yes.
or a silent cry.
Oh yes.
It's an oxymoron. This is sport is sport, sport is sport, and it's very, very demanding. Very, very demanding. I know one of my football player, he was a very good football player, and there's nothing like banana apples or clean sports. There's no such thing. It's interesting, and it's much suspension, and you can cry, you can shout, you can attend it. I love it, but it's not clean.
No. The Giro d'Italia ended today. Primož Roglic won it. He beat Geraint Thomas. I have to say, I followed this. I watched bits of the Giro, but people going, "Oh, it's boring this year." I was like, "No, not really. It's just that's cycling. That's what it is," and you just accept it. I just go, "I don't care." Same with football. Same with rugby. Same with American football. Just enjoy the show. And what I with my kids go, don't be involved in it. If you want to play to your heart's content, but don't dream of moving up the ranks as an amateur, top amateur, or a professional without having to have that moment where you say, okay, I'll take the pill, I'll take the injection, I'll take the drink, because this means more to me than my life or my health. And that's where we, it's just that, it's
my best example for me is I love Jimi Hendrix. What he took, but he stood to it, and he paid for it.
yeah.
But he was a genius. They can't play to this day like he did. No Stevie Ray Vaughan, nobody could play like Jimi Hendrix. And it, of course, it's like if he would have been clean, he wouldn't have played half as good.
There you go.
We never know.
Yeah. Like it's like I was speaking with Andy Mack, one of our co-hosts, about absinthe and all these great writers and artists drinking absinthe, the wormwood absinthe, and so on, and going off their heads. Sure, most of the Irish writers, great poets, were all alcoholics, raging alcoholics, and they wrote brilliantly. So there you go.
Right. I'm reading a book of your right now, The Third Policeman.
Oh, very good. Very good. Very.
So, of course, the guy better than me. It's great. I don't care what he drank. It's beautiful.
You just have to accept it. Like, I mean, alcohol, drugs, okay, let them do it and just let them create. Be good. On that note, I say thank you very, very much, Johann Skocek.
Thank you,
Andrew Flynn. Thank you, Kimmy. Been a wonderful second half of the show. I know the guys enjoyed it. Our people online, just a couple of things here.
Yeah.
I will put them out. Frank, thank you very much to you guys. Amazing Best Sport Show. So good to see Johann here.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having me. It was a nice evening. Thank you.
It was late coming, but to you. But thank you so much, Johann. It was a pleasure and a real boost of knowledge. I know our viewers and this like as well. Keane, thank you. Andrew, thank you.
No problem.
And see you all.
Bye. Thank you.
And on that note, I will say thank you all for joining us tonight, for putting up with us, because we went into an awful lot of detail, an awful lot of interesting material, but I know we've all learned from it as well. So thank you again, and have a great week. And until next Sunday, take care of yourselves and each other.